Faites l'appel, monsieur le greffier, s'il vous plaît.
Monsieur le Senator Gorst.
Présent.
Monsieur le Senator Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le Senator Ferguson. Monsieur le Senator Lafondre.
Présent.
Madame le Senator Valois.
Présente.
Madame le Senator Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le Senator Pallet.
Présent.
Monsieur le Senator Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Hélier.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présente.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Gruville. Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Madame le Deputy Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le Deputy Southern.
Présent.
Madame le Deputy de Gruville.
Présente.
Monsieur le Deputy Lewis.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Higgins. Monsieur le Deputy Masson.
Présent.
Madame le Deputy Pinnell.
Présente.
Monsieur le Deputy de Saint-Martin.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Madame le Deputy Doublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le Deputy Labby.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Wickenden. Monsieur le Deputy de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Truscott.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Young.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Ash.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Morel.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Guida.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Madame le Deputy Lehegra. Monsieur le Deputy Aye.
Présent.
Madame le Deputy Pershard.
Présente.
Monsieur le Deputy Ward.
Présent.
Madame le Deputy Alves.
Présente.
Monsieur le Deputy Pamplin.
Présent.
Madame le Deputy Gardner.
Présente.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours bu la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de la conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de la bénédiction. Réussisse au bien et au soulagement du peuple qu'il te plut de commettre à leurs soins. Quand nous t'en prions en nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite en la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous ennuie point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi est la reine, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Monsieur le Connétable de Gruville.
Members agree the
Sir,
connétable
the-
will not differ, excusez.
Monsieur le Deputy Wickenden.
Malade.
Je jure que Monsieur le Deputy Wickenden est tellement disposé qu'on ne peut pas assister aux tâches sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le Deputy Higgins.
Malade.
Je jure que Monsieur le Deputy Higgins est tellement disposé qu'on ne peut pas assister aux tâches sans exposer sa santé. Les tâches sont en nombre, Monsieur le Président.
Les États sont constitués. Well, welcome to you all, both in the States Assembly and those who are watching and listening to the sitting of the States in Liberation Square. In particular, on this special day, I am pleased to welcome on behalf of members Her Majesty's personal representative, His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor. I know that members will also wish to recognise a number of distinguished visitors who are sitting in the gallery upstairs, and those of you who are watching and listening in Liberation Square will, I hope, join into that welcome because many of our guests are already down in the square with you. May I start with the New Jersey delegation, 3 members of which are here in the different galleries in the chamber. Mr. Reid Gashura, the Mayor of Trenton, Assemblyman Gordon Johnson, and Assemblyman Gary Sher and Mrs. Sher. Next, I'm very pleased to welcome the Channel Island Cross-Parliamentary Group representatives of the Parliament in Westminster. Most of that delegation are in Liberation Square already, but we have in the gallery the leader of the parliamentary group, the Right Honourable Andrew Rossendale MP. Jersey's connections with the Royal Navy are very important to us, demonstrated by the commitment of this chamber, the States, to HMS Iron Duke. And we're also delighted to have with us Brigadier Jock Fraser, the Western Naval Attaché, and Commander Steve Hannigan. And finally, I welcome on members' behalf Mr. Dimri Sudas, the Senior Counsellor of the Embassy of the Republic of Belarus. At this formal sitting of the States on Liberation Day, I now call on the Deputy of Greville.
I'm greatly honoured to have been invited to make this year's Liberation Day speech. This not only marks 74 years of our liberation from German occupation, but it is almost exactly 100 years since this chamber passed a proposition giving women in Jersey the vote. I stand here today acutely aware that the freedoms my children rightfully take for granted, freedom from occupation and fascism, but also freedom for women to be represented and to represent, were fought for, paid for, and sometimes died for within our living memory. And I am aware too, as Jersey's Minister for International Development, that these liberties are still denied to millions of people across the world. And so I ask you that today, as we remember with thanks and pride all those who played a part in our liberation from Nazi tyranny, that you think of two other things as well. First, keep in mind the fortitude and courage of this island's women, the mothers, grandmothers, sisters and daughters whose bravery and nerve kept things going throughout the war. And second, I ask you to spare a thought for the millions of women and men still living through war and oppression and in need of outside assistance, just as we were 74 years ago. This is a day for reflection and memory, so let me share a few. Now, this may surprise some people, especially my children, but I wasn't actually around in the war. I wasn't born until 15 years after it ended. As a Jersey girl, both my parents and grandparents all started the war in our beautiful island. But their experiences were, however, very different. My maternal grandfather had come to Jersey from Denmark with his parents when he was 2. And it was after one Bully Bay hill climb in the 1930s that Papa Jensen met a beautiful young woman from up north in Trinity, Doris Fossey. They were soon married, and their 2 girls, Han and Anna, my mother and her sister, who are sitting in the public gallery today. When war broke out, many young men, including my grand's brothers, signed up to fight. My grandfather, though, was stopped because he hadn't been naturalised and still held a Danish passport. Worse still, it became apparent that if he stayed in Jersey, he would be deported to a concentration camp. Panic set in, they packed a few belongings and left Jersey in one of our last boats out of the island and made their way to London. Papa put his engineering skills to good use, making aircraft parts and servicing British aircraft to help keep the Royal Air Force flying throughout the war. My gran, a farm girl, had never left Jersey before, so found living in London in the Blitz, well, quite exciting, really. They remember, as did my mother and her sister, they remember strapping their gas masks to their school satchels, waving to British planes overhead, and spending almost every night sheltering from German bombers as they slept in the London Underground. Popper gave sleeping in the Underground a go once or twice, but actually preferred to take his chances above ground, claiming that the double shifting at the factory was better than listening to cackling women and the clicking of their knitting needles that prevented any chance of a good night's sleep on the train platform. In the morning, as families emerged from the station, there was always a certain amount of trepidation of what awaited them up top. One morning, they discovered that their house had been bombed and they'd lost everything. My mother, typical of the women of her generation, doesn't dwell on the fear or the hardship, although she does particularly remember the terror of the Doodlebugs in 1944, hearing their engines cut out and having to literally run for it. But she recalls the hilarity of finding their oven blown across the road with one of my grandmother's cakes still intact inside it. Meanwhile, in Jersey, my father, Henry Labby, was a young boy living on our farm in Grooville. When the island was occupied, hundreds were evacuated or left to fight. And some, like my uncle, were put in prison, in his case for having been found with one of the forbidden crystal radio sets in the house. The prison got so full over the 5 years that there was actually a waiting list to get in. The country people were generally better off than most townsfolk because they could grow food, albeit under the watchful eye of the Germans, who kept a very rigorous inventory of all crops and livestock in the island. Farms would often receive random inspections when family members would be expected to try and muffle the unofficial pig and scoop up and stash the unofficial chickens. The women were particularly resourceful and creative. They would come home with prams to glean from fields, collect firewood, and use whatever they could to try and feed their families. Clothes were repaired until they finally fell apart and new ones fashioned from the sitting room curtains. And as I've seen women in modern times do in refugee camps and war-torn countries, they tried their best to maintain the illusion of a normal life for their children. Until June 1944, supplies had been coming in from France to feed both the islanders and the German garrison. But after D-Day, this stopped, and people literally began to starve. Jersey people were starving, German soldiers were starving, Russian slave workers were starving. The Russians would frequently turn up on our farm from the quarry in Queen's Valley to be given a cup of soup, unofficial soup. Salvation for the Jersey people came in the form of the Red Cross parcels brought in by the SS Vega, who brought life-saving supplies donated by the people of Canada and New Zealand. As we look back on these extraordinary events, what can we conclude? On this, Jersey's happiest and most important day, I want to leave you with a suggestion. I hope that, as one of the only places on British soil to have received humanitarian aid, we will never forget the relief and jubilation that liberation brought to the islanders on the 9th of May 1945. So let us ensure that this memory genuinely lives on for future generations by ensuring that the sentiments actually mean something. Liberation is not just flag waving and fly-pasts and speeches, nor is it something that happened to Granny 74 years ago. We who know the value of liberation should surely be its greatest champions. Today, Jersey brings some of this freedom, this liberation from poverty and squalor and injustice to hundreds of thousands of people in developing countries. And so on this 74th anniversary of our deliverance, as memories fade and the eyes that witnessed the occupation grow dimmer, as we celebrate our freedom, Let us commit ourselves to making the word liberation mean something to our children as well.
Thank you very much.
May I call for the adjournment?
The adjournment is called for, and the States now stand adjourned until 9:30 on Tuesday, the 21st of May.